What would you think if I told you that the moment you say I do, something inside you begins to rot? Not because you're weak, not because love is a lie, but because from that moment on, the system, the expectations, and often the woman beside you begin reshaping what it means for you to be a man, and they do it quietly, gently, and with your full permission. You might think marriage is about partnership, about mutual respect, about building something together. That's the story you were told by your parents, by society, maybe even by her. But look closer, really look. What happens after the ring goes on? Suddenly, your weekends aren't yours. Your friendships fade. Your focus is redirected. Your instincts are questioned. You feel guilty for wanting space, for needing silence, for choosing your own goals over shared plans. You stop being a man with direction. You become a man who checks in, a man who asks before he acts, a man whose strength is filtered through her comfort. At first, you think it's compromise. You think you're growing, that this is maturity, that real love means sacrifice. But soon you start sacrificing not just bad habits or solo trips, but pieces of your identity. And the most dangerous part is, you call it love. That's how the trap works, because she doesn't take your freedom by force. She makes you surrender it yourself. And once you do, she doesn't give it back. Not out of malice, but because the version of you that puts her first, that bends, that adapts, is the version she now expects. Anything less is now selfish, harsh, unloving. You thought love was unconditional, but now your presence, your peace, your masculinity are under quiet negotiation. All the time. Marriage doesn't shackle you with metal. It shackles you with expectation, with routine, with invisible consequences. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you made a big decision without second-guessing how she'd react? When was the last time you woke up and structured your day purely on what you wanted without wondering how it would affect her mood, her approval, her affection? Most men don't even notice when it starts, because the first chains are wrapped in silk. Let's do this together. I just want us to be aligned. We need to think as a team now. Harmless, reasonable, but inch by inch, your autonomy is exchanged for harmony, not equality harmony. And harmony in a marriage is almost always defined by her emotional baseline. So you begin to manage her, not consciously, not out of fear, but out of training. You stop doing what makes you feel alive because last time she sulked. You don't share what's bothering you because she took it personally. You avoid conflict because you've learned that silence keeps the peace. You think you're being kind, but what you're really doing is amputating your own instincts for the illusion of connection. Marriage tells you that love is the prize, but for most men, love becomes the leash. And here's what's worse. No one warns you. They congratulate you. They say you've found the one. They tell you you're lucky. They tell you she's beautiful, supportive, strong. And maybe she is. Maybe she's not manipulative. Maybe she's not cruel. But even the good ones, especially the good ones, reshape you. Because good women still have expectations. And the better you are at meeting them, the less you belong to yourself. Eventually, you begin to notice the shift. The things you used to do without hesitation, now you pause. The dreams you used to chase, now you postpone. The gut decisions you used to make, now you weigh them against her feelings. And you tell yourself it's balance, that you're being mature. But deep down, you feel it. You are no longer free. Not because you're controlled, but because you've made your freedom conditional on her comfort. That's the part no one says out loud. That most modern marriages aren't built on love. They're built on quiet performance, on constant compromise, on managing emotions, walking on emotional eggshells, and over-explaining yourself to avoid the talk later. And every time you bite your tongue, Every time you agree to what you didn't want. Every time you tell yourself it's not worth the argument, a piece of your inner fire dies. You're not being loved. You're being digested. You start waking up with a heaviness you can't name. It's not depression. It's not fear. It's a quiet erosion of self-respect. You smile when you need to, say the right things, play the part. You function, but you feel like a visitor in your own life. The man you used to be, the one with sharp edges, opinions. Hunger, he's been softened, made agreeable, safer. You don't explode. You disappear. This is the part no one talks about, the emotional suppression men normalize in marriage. You get praised for being emotionally mature, for communicating better, for understanding her triggers. But what it really means is this: you've become very skilled at silencing yourself. You watch your tone, you walk on timing, you analyze her face before you speak, you read the room before making a joke. You learn how to anticipate emotional shifts before they happen, so you can adapt, apologize, soften, so she doesn't spiral, so she doesn't accuse you of not caring, so she doesn't withhold affection, or worse, twist your silence into proof that you're distant, broken, incapable of connection. You become an emotional butler, always on standby, always managing her weather, and the worst part, you think it's your fault. You think maybe you're not loving her right. Maybe you're emotionally unavailable. Maybe men are just bad at intimacy. That's the lie that keeps men imprisoned. That their discomfort is a flaw. That their urge for space, solitude, and silence is immaturity. But here's the truth: your natural emotional rhythm isn't broken. It's just not compatible with how most women operate in relationships. She wants constant emotional feedback. She wants processing. She wants you to talk about feelings like a woman does, detailed, expressive, validating, not because she's evil, but because that's how she bonds, how she feels secure. But for you, that kind of intimacy feels like intrusion. You don't want to dissect everything. You don't want to relive every misstep. You don't want to give her your emotional blood on demand just so she can feel better. You want peace. And in most marriages, peace becomes a reward for emotional obedience. You give her the right responses. You get calm. You set boundaries. You get conflict. You hold your ground. You're labeled cold. You pull back. She pulls harder. You try to be honest. She calls it harsh. You say you need space. She hears rejection. So you compromise again, and again, and again, until eventually you forget what your real boundaries ever were. Marriage, for many men, is not a union. It's a slow re-education. You are trained out of your own instincts and into her expectations, not because she's a tyrant, but because the system rewards it. Happy wife, happy life. Remember, she gets to cry. You get to hold it together. She gets to vent. You get to listen. She gets to need. You get to provide. She gets to redefine the rules. You get to adapt. And if you push back too hard, there's a word waiting for you: abusive. That's the nuclear weapon in modern relationships. Disagree too strongly, assert too directly, detach too often, and you're suddenly unsafe. Even if you've never raised your voice, even if you've never laid a hand, you're emotionally threatening. Why? Because you refuse to surrender your full emotional control to her needs. And that's the real problem. Marriage today is not about union. It's about emotional compliance. Her pain becomes the center. Your discomfort becomes the problem. Her feelings are valid. Yours are suspicious. And you, the man, are stuck in a permanent contradiction. Be strong, but soft. Lead, but don't dominate. Provide, but don't control. Be stoic, but open up. Be masculine, but emotionally available. Be yourself, but only the version that doesn't trigger her. And every day, you shrink to fit it. Do you know what that does to your spirit, to your drive, to your edge? It dulls you, not all at once, not violently, just quietly, in the name of love, in the name of growth, in the name of being a good husband. You can't rage against it because there's nothing to rage against. It's invisible, unwritten, expected, and every time you choose her feelings over your instinct, it rewards you with praise, with kisses, with approval. Until one day, you look in the mirror and realize the man staring back doesn't need chains. He's already in a cage and he built it himself. You used to move through life with direction. Now you move through it with permission. Every decision passes through a filter not of logic, not of purpose, but of emotional consequence. You don't ask yourself, is this right for me? You ask, will this upset her? And once you do that long enough, your inner compass, the one that used to drive you forward, stops working. That's what they don't tell you about marriage. That the damage isn't just emotional, it's directional. You lose clarity, you lose aggression, you lose the clean violence of purpose that makes a man dangerous in the best way. You replace it with diplomacy, with hesitation, with negotiation. You become hesitant in your own life, because now everything is a conversation, everything is a joint decision. Every instinct you once trusted is now suspect unless it aligns with her emotional safety. Your vision becomes a shared vision. Your mission becomes a family goal. Your time becomes ours. And the price of that, your individuality. And don't be fooled, it's not mutual. She doesn't lose her identity. In fact, she's encouraged to cultivate it. Strong woman, independent, boss. She can have her friends, her career, her dreams, her solo vacations, her mental health space, her self-care days. You try doing that. You take a day to yourself without checking in, and you're distant. You set a boundary, and you're cold. You put your mission first, and you're selfish. You prioritize your purpose, and suddenly you're emotionally unavailable, because deep down, her freedom is sacred. Yours is negotiable. And if you speak up about it, if you say, I need space, this isn't working, I feel drained, watch what happens. She won't hear your words. She'll hear threat, rejection, a crack in the illusion that her emotional needs are your duty. And the system will back her. Your friends will tell you to hang in there. Your family will say that's just marriage. Therapists will ask how you can show up better for her. No one will say, maybe you're being erased. Because men aren't supposed to say that. Men aren't supposed to feel that. Men aren't supposed to admit that marriage, for them, is often emotional servitude wrapped in the language of love. So you suppress it. You become good at nodding, smiling, distracting yourself. You get into hobbies not because you're passionate, but because you need somewhere to breathe. You start to fantasize not sexually, but mentally about a life where you wake up and answer to no one. But you stay, because leaving makes you the villain. And this is where the final trap kicks in guilt. She will not let you leave without making you feel like you've betrayed something sacred. She'll cry, she'll accuse, she'll ask how you could do this after everything she gave up. And maybe she did give things up. Maybe she did care. Maybe she's not evil. Maybe she's just scared. But that doesn't change the truth. You lost yourself. And now she's asking you to feel bad for trying to get it back. So you hesitate. You tell yourself it's just a rough patch, that if you communicate better, it'll change, that maybe you're just burnt out, that love takes work, that you should be grateful. Grateful for a life where your emotions are questioned, your decisions are monitored, your desires are filtered, your freedom is doled out like allowance if you behave. Let me ask you something. If a woman told you she felt this way, that she had to check in constantly, that her space wasn't respected, that she couldn't make decisions without backlash, that she had to perform a version of herself just to keep the peace. What would you call it? Abusive, controlling, toxic. But when a man lives it, it's called marriage. And every man who's been there knows it doesn't always break you with pain. It breaks you with numbness. You stop feeling joy. You stop feeling fire. You stop feeling anything that isn't filtered through her reactions. You are not alive. You are tolerated. And the most painful part, you volunteered for it. Because that's how it works. They don't chain your body. They chain your choices, and they call it commitment. You don't even notice the moment it happens. It's not one big decision. It's not one dramatic argument. It's a series of tiny trades so small, so subtle, they feel like nothing at the time. You give up a trip. You skip a night out. You avoid a difficult topic. You phrase your opinion a little softer. You leave out the full truth. You stop making jokes she used to laugh at. You start agreeing just to move on. And every time you do, she gets more of you, not the real you, but the version that doesn't scare her, doesn't trigger her, doesn't make her feel insecure. You don't feel the weight of these trades until one day you look around and realize you don't laugh like you used to. You don't move like you used to. You don't even think like you used to. You've been domesticated, not in the practical sense, not in the help with chores. Pay the bills, raise the kids sense. That's fine. That's life. That's adulthood. I'm talking about spiritual domestication, the internal dulling of the masculine edge, the fire that once told you who you are, what you want, where you're going extinguished, replaced by a script you didn't write. Because here's the truth that will gut you if you let it in. Marriage isn't always built on love. It's often built on management. Emotional management, behavioral management, reputational management. The moment you deviate from her vision of what you're supposed to be, you're not just disagreeing, you're destabilizing her control system. You become a threat to her emotional security. So she does what women have done for centuries. She corrects you, not with violence, but with withdrawal, with tears, with coldness, with that sharp look that says, "Try that again, and you'll regret it." She doesn't have to scream. She doesn't have to fight. She just has to make you feel like a bad man for choosing yourself. And you, if you still care, will fold. That's how the leverage works. Because you still care. You care about not hurting her. You care about keeping peace. You care about being a good partner. You care about your reputation. You care about doing what's right. But let me tell you something brutal. The more you care in a system like this, the more you'll be controlled by it. Because modern marriage doesn't reward integrity. It rewards compliance, emotional labor, predictability, and predictable men who don't speak too loudly, feel too deeply, or choose too selfishly are easier to manage. You don't become her partner, you become her asset. And maybe she doesn't even know she's doing it. Maybe she truly believes this is what love looks like: constant emotional access, round-the-clock support, endless reassurance. But it doesn't matter, because the outcome is the same. You no longer live for yourself. You live for peace. You live for harmony. You live for the absence of conflict. And in that prison of comfort, your masculinity wilts. You stop taking risks. You stop telling the truth. You stop challenging her. You stop leading. You stop standing firm. You become agreeable, safe, soft. She says she wants strength but punishes you for using it. She says she wants leadership but resents your authority. She says she wants honesty but with conditions. She doesn't want your truth. She wants her version of your truth. The one that won't disrupt her emotional world. The one that keeps her center of gravity intact. And you play along because you think that's what love demands: sacrifice, sensitivity, support. But what if I told you that the part of you she fell in love with, the fire, the boldness, The unshakable direction is the very part you're now being asked to dull. You're not being asked to grow, you're being asked to shrink. And you're told that shrinking is virtue. This is the lie that keeps men stuck in marriages that look happy from the outside, but feel like slow suffocation from the inside. You laugh at dinner parties, you pose for holiday photos, you post anniversary messages. But behind closed doors, you feel it the dull ache of a man who traded clarity for comfort. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because you realize the life you're living was designed to keep everyone else comfortable except you. Here's the part that hits the hardest: you weren't forced into this. You walked into it, eyes open, smiling, thinking you were choosing love, partnership, family, and in many ways, you were. You wanted something real. You weren't trying to dominate. You weren't trying to manipulate. You just wanted to build, to give, to be enough. That's what makes it so hard to leave. Because if you admit what's really happening, you also have to admit that you allowed it. You ignored the gut feelings. You rationalized the red flags. You called it normal when you felt boxed in. You said this is just life when the spark died. You told yourself that's stress. Kids, work, all of it explained why you felt hollow. Why your chest tightened every time you walked through your own front door. But deep down, you knew. You knew the freedom you once had to think, to feel, to move as a man was gone. Not because she stole it, but because you kept handing it over in pieces, in exchange for validation, for safety, for peace. And that's the real wake-up call. Most men don't lose themselves in marriage because they're weak. They lose themselves because they're too strong in the wrong direction, too committed, too loyal, too willing to endure. You kept thinking, if I just work harder, this will feel better. You tried being more supportive, more sensitive, more emotionally available. You went to therapy, you read the books, you apologized when you didn't know why. And still, it wasn't enough. Because what she wanted wasn't just your love. She wanted your alignment. She wanted your emotional operating system to be compatible with hers. She wanted access to your thoughts, your motives, your moods, all without resistance. And when you started to resist, even subtly, she felt betrayed. That's why pulling away feels like violence to her. That's why setting boundaries feels cruel. That's why reclaiming your time, your silence, your mission feels like punishment. Because she wasn't just relating to you. She was depending on you to be the one place she could fully regulate herself. And now you're waking up, not in rage, not in rebellion, but in cold clarity. You see how it happened. You see how the system was built. Not by her alone, but by everything around you. The movies, the shows, the expectations, the narratives about what makes a man good. The fear of being labeled selfish, toxic, unloving. And now, the illusion is shattered. You're not bitter. You're not angry. You're just done performing. You stop trying to win arguments that shouldn't exist. You stop apologizing for your instincts. You stop leaking your energy into emotional negotiations. You stop explaining your solitude like it's a crime. You stop asking for permission to be yourself. Because you finally understand what real freedom means. It doesn't mean running away. It doesn't mean abandoning responsibility. It doesn't mean refusing connection. It means choosing your direction without needing approval. It means being whole, not because she allows it, but because you demand it from yourself. And maybe that means leaving. Maybe that means staying, but on terms that no longer bend to her feelings at the cost of your self-respect. Maybe that means drawing a line in the sand and saying, "This is who I am. You're welcome to walk beside me, but I won't be reshaped to fit your needs anymore." And if she can't handle that, let her walk, let her cry, Let her curse. Let her rewrite the story in her favor. Let her say you were cold, that you changed, that you gave up. You don't need to defend yourself, because you know what really happened. You didn't stop loving her. You stopped abandoning yourself. And if there's one thing you take away from all of this, let it be this. She didn't break you. She revealed what you were too afraid to protect.